Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's Parashah falls on the 29th of Av, 5785, August 23rd, 2025, and it is for Parashat Re'eh. However, we're going to be continuing with our reading of the Book of Kings 2, that's Melachim Bet, chapters 4 through 6. Those who want to follow along in English can do so via Chabad.org. As always, I'd like to remind everybody I'm not a professional scripture scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the scripture. Without further ado, let's begin. Melachim Bet, chapter 4, verse 1. Now a woman of the wives of the disciples of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, Your servant, my husband, has died, and you know that your servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor has come to take my 2 children for himself as slaves. And Elisha said to her, What shall I do for you? Tell me what you have in the house. And she said, Your maidservant has nothing at all in the house except a jug of oil. And he said, Borrow vessels for yourself from outside, from all your neighbors. Do not borrow only a few empty vessels. And you shall come and close the door about yourself and about your sons, and you shall pour upon all these vessels, and the full one you shall carry away. And she went away from him and closed the door about herself and about her sons. They were bringing vessels to her, and she was pouring. And it was when the vessels were full that she said to her son, Bring me another vessel. And he said to her, There is no other vessel. And the oil stopped. And she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go sell the oil, and pay your debt, and you and your sons will live with the remainder. And it was that day that Elisha went as far as Shunem, and there was a prominent woman who prevailed upon him to eat a meal. And it was, whenever he would pass, he would stop there to eat a meal. And she said to her husband, Behold now, I know that he is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Now let us make a small walled upper chamber, and place there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. And it will be that when he comes to us, he will turn into there. And it was one day that he went there, that he turned into the upper chamber, and lay down there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shumanitess. And he called her, and she stood before him. And he said to him, Please say to her, Behold, you have busied yourself on our account with all this trouble. What is there to do for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or to the general of the army? And she said, I dwell in the midst of my people. And he said, Now what can we do for her? And Gehazi said, Indeed, she has no son, and her husband is old. And he said, Summon her. And he summoned her, and she stood at the doorway. And he said, At this time next year, when you will be alive like now, you will be embracing a son. And she said, No, my lord, O man of God, do not fail your maidservant. And the woman conceived and bore a son, at this time a year later, which Elisha had spoken to her. And the child grew up, and it was one day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, My head, my head. And he said to the servant, Carry him to his mother. And he carried him and brought him to his mother, and he sat on her knees until noon, and he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and she closed about him and left. And she called her husband and said, Please send me one of the servants and one of the she-asses, and I will run up to the man of God and return. And he said, Why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, It's all right. And she saddled the she-ass, and she said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Don't keep back from riding because of me unless I tell you. And she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it was when the man of God saw her from afar that he said to Gehazi his servant, Here is that Shunammitess. Now please run toward her and say to her, Are you well? Is your husband well? Is the child well? And she said, We are well. And she came to the man of God, to the mountain, and she took hold of his feet, and Gehazi approached to push her away. Now the man of God said, Let her be, for her soul is bitter to her, and the Lord hid it from me and did not tell me. And she said, Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, Do not mislead me? And he said to Gehazi, Gird your loins and take my staff in your hand, and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not answer him. And you shall place my staff on the lad's face. And the lad's mother said, As the Lord lives, and by your life, I will not leave you. And he rose and went after her. And Gehazi went ahead of them, and he placed the staff on the lad's face, and there was no sound nor any attention. And he returned toward him and told him, saying, The lad has not awakened. And Elisha came into the house, and behold, it was the lad dead, laid out on the bed. And he came and closed the door about both of them, and he prayed to the Lord. And he went up and lay on the child, and placed his mouth on his mouth, and his eyes on his eyes, and his palms on his palms, and he prostrated himself upon him, and the child's flesh became warm. And he returned and walked in the house, once here and once there. And he went up and prostrated himself upon him, and the lad sneezed up to 7 times, and the lad opened his eyes. And he summoned Gehazi, and said, Call this Shunammitess. And he called her, and she came to him, and he said, Pick up your son. And she came and fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground, and she picked up her son and departed. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and the famine was in the land, and the disciples of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, Set the large pot on the fire, and cook a stew for the disciples of the prophets. And one went out to the field to gather herbs, and he found a vine in the field, and gathered from it wild mushrooms, his garment full. And he came and diced them into the pot of stew, for they did not know. And they poured for the people to eat. And it was when they were eating of the stew that they cried out and said, Death is in the pot, O man of God! And they could not eat. And he said, Fetch flour. And he threw it into the pot. And he said, Pour it for the people, and let them eat. And there was no harmful substance in the pot. And a man came from Baal Shalisha, and he brought to the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley bread, and sheaves of fresh grain in their shells. And he said, Give to the people, and let them eat. And his servant said, How will I give this before 100 men? And he said, Give the people, and let them eat. For so has the Lord said, They shall eat, and leave over. And he placed it before them, and they ate and left over, according to the word of the Lord. End of chapter 4. So quite a few interesting things happen here. This is a continuation. Previously, Elijah the prophet was taken away, and left behind with a great abundance of spirit was Elisha, his disciple. So, during this time, we are seeing a list of stories of the miracles and good works that were done by this particular man of God. First, we find out about a widow. Her husband has died. He had outstanding debts. And so her 2 children are going to be taken to be made as slaves to pay off the debt. Now, he says, What shall I do for you? As if to say, like, what do you want me to do? Like, how can I help? Tell me what you have in the house. And so she says, I have nothing except a jug of oil. He tells her to borrow vessels. So basically, outside of your home, go borrow jars from your neighbors, from whoever. Go borrow a bunch of jars. Okay, and not only a few. Like, get a lot of them. Come back to your house, close the door, and, so that you and your sons are removed from everybody, and you will pour upon all the vessels, all right? So the ones that your sons are collecting, you will pour into them, and the full one, meaning the one that is left over, shall be carried away, meaning she'll keep it. So she goes and does exactly as told, and she keeps getting more and more vessels, one by one by one. And so finally, she runs out of vessels. Bring me another vessel, and they tell her there is no other vessel. And the oil stopped, meaning what happened here was that the oil in the full cask or jug or whatever did not run out. The miracle was that this man who has passed away was one who loved and feared God. And so Elisha has given them a very specific miracle that they are able to enact by following his instructions. That miracle is to conceal themselves with a jar of oil that will not be depleted so long as they continue to pour it. And so that was the specific. He does tell her, make sure that you get enough, like get a lot of them. As soon as it's done and there are no more to get, the miracle stops. the whole thing freezes. No more oil. So this was a one-time miracle that this sanctified oil, which belonged to the deceased man of God disciple, was able to perform this very Hanukkah-adjacent, never-ending oil sort of deal. So it was a very good thing, and behold, he then tells her, after she says that this happened, go and sell the oil and pay your debt. You and your sons will live with the remainder. So she has successfully been saved and received the good news. Next up, as he's in Shunem, this is where the Shunamites live, there's a woman there who's a prominent woman, so she's a well-respected woman in the area, and always she would say, please, come eat, come eat. And so when he'd stop by, every time he passed through, he would have a meal. Well, at some point, she began to understand who this guy was. She realized he's actually a man of God. So let us make a small walled upper chamber. So she realizes, like, I can give this guy a very nice accommodation. He will rest with us. He will stay with us. And it comes to be that she is a host to him. Now, Elisha is not one not to repay any sort of kindness, right? So he asks her, and her plan is that when he comes to visit, he could stay there. Well, he asks her by saying to his servant Gehazi, call her to me, call this Shunamitess. And in response, he says to him, please say to her, behold, you've busied yourself on our account with all this trouble. What is there to do for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the general of the army, etc.? She said, I dwell in the midst of my people. Now, this basically suggests that she is not one who is concerned with fraternizing with the nobles or the kings or anything. I dwell in the midst of my people. So I am one of the common folk. But also, the notion of dwelling amongst the people Israel, this is also a thing related to God in many ways during the different times, right? God dwells among the people and in the camp and so on. So with this, the prophet Elisha hears this, and he's like, whoa, what can we do for her then? If she doesn't need those favors and she's just one of the people, what can we do for her? And Gehazi goes, indeed, she has no son and her husband is old. So at this, Elisha connects the dots and he goes, okay, call her here. And he tells her this time next year, when you will be alive like now, you will be embracing a son. And she tells him, no, my lord, O man of God, do not fail your maidservant. So in other words, he tells her, yeah, you're going to have a child. A year from now, you'll have a son. And she basically pleads with him, don't give me false hope, right? Do not fail your maidservant. So it says that she has a son a year later, exactly as Elisha said, and the child grows up. And he's out there in the field with his father, and he says there's something wrong with his head. Oh, my head, my head. And the father says, carry him to his mother. So he lays down on his mother's lap, right, or he sits on her knees, right, and then until noon, and then he dies. So she gets up, and she lays the child on the bed of the man of God. So in the room that she set aside for Elisha, this little partition for him, she puts the boy on that bed, and then she leaves him in the room. Now she calls her husband and says, give me one of the servants and one of the she-asses. I will run up to the man of God in return. So she's got a plan. And the husband says, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she says, it's all right. Notice, why would she do this? She did not tell her husband that the child has died. She says simply that she needs to go see the man of God. And he makes a point, well, it's not the new moon and it's not the Sabbath, right? So it's not a sanctified day. Why today? And she just doesn't answer the question. So this speaks to her modesty, and also she's not going to give life to the fact that the boy is gone to the father, because this might kill him. It'd be devastating. So she saddles up and rides out and tells her servant, basically, you go on ahead, don't slow down for me unless I tell you to. So we can assume that the servant basically led the way, right, got there first, etc. And then as she's approaching, it was that Elisha sees her from a distance, and he goes, oh, Gehazi, look, it's that lady, the Shunamitess. Go ask her if she's well and if her husband and the child are well. And so Gehazi goes, and she responds, we are well. Then she gets to the man of God. She gets to Elisha, and as soon as she gets to him, now suddenly she collapses to his feet, and Gehazi tries to get in the way, but Elisha says, no, let her be, for her soul is bitter to her, and the Lord hid it from me and did not tell me. So she's in grief. She's in great agony, and he notices that this information was not given to him by God. So he has put the two together. And she says, did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, do not mislead me? This is very, very, very important. Why is she saying this? Did I ask for a son from my Lord? She did not ask for this. It was his decision to make an audible and say, you're going to have a son. He blessed her with a child. Now, this was not something she asked for, but she did say, basically, don't give me false hope, right? Do not mislead me. Well, now that the son is dead, that's what happened, isn't it? So he tells his servant Gehazi, basically, brace yourself, take my staff, and if you meet anybody on the way, say nothing. If anybody greets you, do not answer. Place my staff on the lad's face. So this is a very important thing. There's clearly, just like she did not let anything get in the way of her approaching the prophet says, do not let anything approach you or get in the way of you doing what you have to do. And so the woman says, as the Lord lives and by your life, I will not leave you. So she is basically going to stick to the prophet. Like this has to happen. So also, interestingly, as the Lord lives and by your life, I will not leave you. So she says, these are the words of Elijah's passing, right? Elisha said this to Elijah. So it's very interesting that she's repeating these verses, very spiritually loaded answers. Gehazi goes ahead. He does what he's instructed, and he comes back and he says, the lad is not awakened. Elisha comes in, sees it for himself. He closes the door behind him, and he prays. Then it says, he went up and lay on the child, placed his mouth on his mouth, eyes on his eyes, and his palms on his palms. So just imagine that you have the boy, he's dead. He's laying there, belly up, and the prophet places his eyes on the child's eyes, mouth to mouth, hand to hand. And it's almost like he is, what are these things? Well, to me, it seems very similar to God breathing life into Adam, the first man. But instead, he is putting eyes, mouth, and hand. So, with your eyes, perhaps you can look upon evil, right? But also see all that is good. With your hands, you can do bad works, but also do great works. And then also with your mouth, you may speak good or evil. So this may be the significance of these three spots, but basically that's just describing how exactly he positioned himself on this kid so that he could help him. And now, after this, he notices that he basically bows down, right? So he like prays basically on top of the child, and then it says that the child's flesh became warm. So this is working. Then he returned, walked in the house once here and there. Then he goes up and does it again, right? The bowing. And then it says the lad sneezed up to 7 times and the lad opened his eyes. At this point, he's alive. So he says, call the Shunammite. He calls her and she says, hello, basically. Or she comes over to him and he says, pick up your son. And she goes and she falls at his feet, bows to the ground, picks up her son and departs. So mission accomplished. All this was the sacred thing. So why did the child die in the first place? Well, he maybe wasn't supposed to be born. And Elisha making the declaration that she'd have a son was the first step. She continued to do everything right. And so this was able to save her son because Elisha had the power of even being able to make such petitions to save a child and bring him back from death. So next up, it says that there's a famine in Gilgal, and the disciples of the prophets are sitting before him. He tells the servant, see the large pot on the fire, or set it on the fire, right? We're going to cook some food for the prophets, disciples. So one of them, he goes out and gathers herbs, and he comes across a bunch of mushrooms, and he takes them home. He doesn't know this, but the mushrooms are poisonous. They get put in the soup. As they're eating, they suddenly realize, oh no, death is in the pot, O man of God. In other words, this food is poisoned. And so he simply says, get flour, and he throws the flour in the pot. I guess it's a flour pot, eh? Throws the flour in the pot, pours it out to the people and let them eat, and behold, nothing bad happened, no harmful substance in the pot. So the flour, behold, was able to purify the poison qualities. Why? Well, we do remember that ephah of fine flour is a sacrificial item, but also Elisha just knew the secrets, so it was blessed and purified. Now moving on to the final bit here, it says that a man came from Baal Shalisha, and he brought the bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, etc. And he tells and Elisha says, give to the people and let them eat. Now again, this is still during the famine, probably. So his servant asks, how am I supposed to feed 100 people with all this? And the response is simply, give the people and let them eat, for so has the Lord said, they shall eat and leave over. And so that's exactly what happens. He puts the food in front of all the people, they eat, and there's still food left over. So here we see a series of great miracles that are happening in front or partly through the influence of Elisha. This is a very significant thing. You know, people talk about miracle workers. We're seeing a person who has successfully taken a person who's died, a dead child, and revived them. A person who has helped turn oil into more oil. A person who was able to purify poison mushroom stew. And now finally a person whose deeds and words apparently were enough, because God told them, when you eat this food, the people will be full and there will be some left over. So we are seeing miracle after miracle. Elisha's power level as a spiritual person, the man of God, is truly, truly powerful. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to chapter 5 in Melachim Bet, verse 1. Now Naaman, the general of the king of Aram, was a prominent man before his lord, and respected, for through him had the Lord given victory for Aram. And the man was a great warrior, and he was a Mezorah. Now the Arameans went out in bands, and captured from the land of Israel a young girl, who ministered to Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, the supplications for my master should be that he go before the prophet who is in Samaria, then he would cure him of his sarat. And he came and told his master, saying, in the following manner has the girl from the land of Israel spoken. And the king of Aram said, come, go, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. He went and took in his possession 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 gold pieces, and 10 suits of clothes. And the letter came to the king of Israel, saying, and now, when this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, and you shall cure him of his sarat. And it was when the king of Israel read the letter that he rent his garments and said, do I have the power from God to put to death and bring to life that this one sends to me to cure a man of his sarat? Just know now and see that he is looking for a pretext against me. And it was when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had rent his garments, that he said to the king, saying, why have you rent your garments? Let him come to me now, and let him know that there is a prophet in Israel. And Naaman came with his horses and with his chariots, and he stood at the doorway of Elisha's house. And Elisha dispatched a messenger to him, saying, go and immerse yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored to you, and you will become clean. Now Naaman had become incensed, and he went away, and he said, here I thought that he would come out to see me, and he would stand and call in the name of Yahweh his God, and he would raise his hand toward the spot and cure the Mezorah. Are not Amanah and Parpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Will I not immerse myself in them and become clean? And he turned away and went in anger. And his servants approached and spoke to him and said, Master, if the prophet spoke to you to do a difficult thing, would you not do it? And surely since he said to you, immerse yourself and become clean. And he went down and immersed himself in the Jordan 7 times, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young lad, and he became clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and his entire camp, and he came and stood before him, and he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God on all the earth except in Israel. And now, accept a gift from your servant. And he said, As the Lord before whom I have stood lives, I will not accept. And he urged him to accept, but he refused. And Naaman said, Now, if only your servant be given a load of earth as carried by a team of mules, for your servant will no longer offer up a burnt offering or a sacrifice to other deities, but to the Lord. For this thing may the Lord forgive your servant. When my master comes to Beth Rimmon to prostrate himself there, and he leans on my hand, and I will prostrate myself in Beth Rimmon, when I bow in Beth Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this thing. And he said to him, Go in peace. And he went some distance away from him. And Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, thought, Here my master has stopped Naaman this Aramean from giving, by not taking from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. And Gehazi chased after Naaman, and Naaman saw him running after him. And he leaned off the chariot toward him and said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master sent me, saying, Here just now 2 youths have come to me from Mount Ephraim of the disciples of the prophets. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 suits of clothing. And Naaman said, Please, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and he tied 2 talents of silver in 2 pockets and 2 suits of clothing. And he gave his 2 servants, and they carried them before him. And he came to a secret place, and he took them from their hands, and he deposited them in the house. And he dismissed the men, and they went away. And he came and stood before his master, and Elisha said to him, Where are you coming from, Gehazi? And he said, Your servant has gone neither here nor there. And he said to him, Did my heart not go when a man turned around off his chariot toward you? Is it time to take the silver and to buy clothing and olive trees and vineyards and sheep and cattle and slaves and maidservants? Now Naaman Zarath shall cling to you and to your children forever. And he went away from before him, stricken with Zarath, white as snow. End of chapter 5. So here we get a really significant testimonial about the conversion, essentially, of a heathen or an alien god worshiper to instead worshiping the God of Israel. This is a prominent general. It says, through this general did God deliver victory to the Arameans, right? So he has been, doing his thing, and they captured it with their warband from the land of Israel, a young girl who became Naaman's maidservant. And so as Naaman is a warrior, yes, it says he was a Mezorah. What this is, it refers to a person who suffers from a case of leprosy, as it is called in the Tzarat. It's not literally leprosy, but it's like a spiritual impurity leprosy. This is the same thing that was on Moses' hand when God was demonstrating his power, and what happened to Miriam and others who do Lashon Hara, right? Gossip about people, things like that. This is where Tzarat comes from. So this man is covered in it, and his maidservant of his wife overhears about this problem, and she tells him that the supplications for my master should be that he go before the prophet who's in Samaria, that he would cure him of his Tzarat. So basically she's saying there's a guy in Samaria who can fix this. And so he tells the king of Aram, and the king of Aram goes, understood, I'm going to send a letter to the king of Israel. We're going to make this happen. He also takes with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, 10 suits of clothes. Now it says that the latter came to the king of Israel, the letter, and it basically tells the king that this guy, this general, is coming to get healed. Now the king does not take this well. It says he rends his garments and responds, do I have power from God to put to death and bring to life that this one sends to me to cure a man of his Tzarat? Just know now and see that he is looking for a pretext against me. So his interpretation of this is he knows he can't do this. He can't cure this guy. So why is this guy coming here? If it's probably so he can have an excuse to declare war, right? A pretext against me. Now Elisha overhears this, that he had rent his garments, right? And now this is a sign of great distress, despair, and grief. And so he asks, "Why have you rent your garments? Let him come to me now and let him know there's a prophet in Israel." So he basically says, "What are you so upset for? Send him my way." So Naaman comes to him with his horses and chariots, and he stands at the doorway of Elisha's house, right? And he sends a messenger to speak on his behalf, and he tells Naaman to go in and out of the Jordan immersed 7 times. Now, Naaman gets pissed because he thinks, what? Really? That's it? I thought you were going to give me some serious thing, but all you're telling me is to go wash in the river? Are the rivers in Damascus not good enough? And so he storms off, but his servants, they say, "Master, if he told you to do something ridiculously hard, you'd still do it, right? So why are you complaining that it's this easy," and so on, is what they're really saying. Like, if he gave you some outlandish quest, you would have gone for it. Why is it something you're turning away because it's simple? So he concedes, and he goes, after explaining himself, he's mad. He's like, "I thought they were going to come out and prove it to me. They were going to proclaim their God in front of me and demonstrate that they have the power. But obviously that's not what happened." So they tell him, don't get upset, just do what he told you. So he does what he was told 7 times in and out of the water. And not only does he come out restored, he's got flesh like a young lad, clean. He is renewed. After this, he returns to Elisha. It says, he and his whole camp, and he stands before him, and he says, "Behold, now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Accept now a gift from your servant." So this moment has enlightened him as to the truth behind Israel and the God of Israel. He now understands that this is the one true God. And this is so significant to him, he makes a point to come back and tell it. Now, he's trying to give a gift in exchange, but there's significance to this why you shouldn't do this. So all that happened, right, was that Elisha the prophet told him what to do, but he did not ask for a reward. Why? Because the reward belongs to God. And the great reward is that this miracle will convince them to believe in the correct one true God. So that is payment enough. Well, nevertheless, he gets turned away, and Naaman says, "If only your servant be given a load of earth as carried by a team of mules, for your servant will no longer offer up a burnt offering or a sacrifice to other deities, but to the Lord." So what he's basically saying is, from this day forth, no more am I going to be worshiping false gods. But I must ask you for one single excuse. Please let it slide, this one thing. When my master comes to Beth Rimmon to prostrate himself there, and he leans on my hand, and I will prostrate myself there too, when I bow down there, may the Lord forgive me for doing so. Now remember, the law is that you cannot be bowing down to gods and things like that. So this guy, despite his overall power and merit as a general and so on, he still has this tremendous sense that he's now found the truth, and he understands it's illegal basically in the faith to be bowing down to other gods, but he asks if this can be overlooked because it's so important. Just, please, can this be overlooked? And as it happens, it seems that is the case. So it all works out for the best. So this is great. We've got a full bona fide believer now. He sends him off with nothing, but he does ask for a thing of earth being carried by mules, right? I mean, he's basically looking to change his whole life to not be worshiping these false idols. However, he leaves with nothing given away, because this is what Elisha decided, or God told Elisha to do. And then Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, he gets a little crafty idea. He's like, that guy showed up here with a whole lot of money. It's awfully a shame that we're not going to be getting any of that. So what he does is he basically pulls an old trick here, a little switcheroo, a little deception. He runs after Naaman, and Naaman's like, "Oh, I saw you running after me. What's the problem?" And he says, "Oh, my master, the prophet, told me that we've got 2 new disciples who need some resources. Care to donate out of the kindness of your heart," right? And so Naaman is totally open to this. He's got enough currency. He asks for 1 talent of silver and 2 dress clothes. And the response is, I'll give you 2 talents of silver and the dress suits. So here you go. Now here's the problem with this. This is a huge problem. It's a problem because the reward, the payment, was that he now believes in God. And it is a huge deal. By Gehazi doing this deal that adds another condition, instead it's now become transactional. Before it was that God healed this man, and this man chose through his own behaviors to follow the instructions he was given. Great. The problem is, when this guy shows up and has him pay for the service, this changes the context. It tweaks the quality of the miracle. So, in order to capture the karmic imbalance here, I think is the point, because now this guy has single-handedly thrown the whole thing out of whack on a spiritual level, the punishment is going to be that the tzarat that was cured from Naaman will now afflict this man and his family, Gehazi and his descendants, forever. Why? Well, he tried to lie about it, and he obviously did something very wrong. So, this is how Elisha punishes him. Now moving on to the final chapter for this week, chapter 6, verse 1 of the book of Kings 2. And the disciples of the prophet said to Elisha, Behold now, the place where we are sitting before you is too narrow for us. Let us go now to the Jordan, and take from there each man 1 beam, and let us make a place for ourselves to sit there. And he said, Go. And one said, Please be willing to go with your servants. And he said, I will go. And he went with them, and they came to the Jordan and cut down the trees. One was casting down the beam, and with the axe blade it fell into the water. He cried out and said, Alas, master, it is borrowed. And the man of God said to him, Where did it fall? And he showed him the spot, and he cut off a piece of wood and threw it. And there the axe blade floated. And he said, Pick it up for yourself. And he stretched out his hand and took it. And the king of Aram was waging war with Israel, and he held counsel with his servants, saying, In a hidden secret place I will encamp. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, Beware of passing this place, for there the Arameans are encamped. And the king of Israel sent to the place concerning which the man of God had told him and cautioned, and he took precautions there not once and not twice. And the king of Aram was greatly disturbed about this matter, and he summoned his servants and said to them, Will you not tell me who of ours reveals my secrets to the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, No, my master the king, but Elisha the prophet who is in Israel tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. And he said, Go and see where he is, and I will send and take him. And it was told to him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. And he sent there horses and chariots and a great army, and they came at night and surrounded the city. And the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, and behold, an army with horses and chariots was surrounding the city. And his attendant said to him, Alas, my master, what shall we do? And he said, Have no fear, for those who are with us are more numerous than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, please open his eyes and let him see. And the Lord opened the lad's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of fiery horses and chariots around Elisha. And they came down to him, and Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, Please strike this people with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, Neither is this the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you seek. And he led them to Samaria. And it was when they came to Samaria that Elisha said, O Lord, open these people's eyes that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in Samaria. Now the king of Israel said to Elisha when he saw them, Shall I slay them, my lord? And he said, You shall not slay. Do you slay those who you have captured with your sword and with your bow? Set food and water for them, and let them eat and drink, and go to their masters. And he prepared for them a lavish feast, and they ate and drank, and he sent them away, and they went to their masters, and Aramean troops no longer continued to invade the land of Israel. And it was after this that Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, mustered all his camp, and he went up and besieged Samaria. Now there was a severe famine in Samaria, and behold, they were besieging it, until a donkey's head sold for 80 silver pieces, and a quarter of a cab of dove's dung sold for 5 silver pieces. And the king of Israel was passing on the wall, when a woman cried out to him, saying, Save me, my lord the king. And he said, If the Lord will not save you, whence shall I save you? From the threshing floor or from the winepress? And the king said to her, What troubles you? And she said, This woman said to me, Give your son, and let us eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. And we cooked my son, and ate him. And I said to her the next day, Give up your son, and let us eat him. But she hid her son. And it was when the king heard the woman's words that he rent his garments while he was passing on the wall. And the people saw, and behold, there was sackcloth on his flesh underneath. And he said, So shall God do to me, and so shall he continue, if Elisha the son of Shaphat's head remain on him today. And Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. And he sent a man from before him. When the messenger had not yet arrived, he said to the elders, Have you seen that this son of a murderer has sent to remove my head? See that when the messenger comes, that you close the door, and you shall hold the door fast against him. Surely the sound of his master's footsteps will follow him. And while he was still speaking with them, behold, the messenger was coming down to him. And he said, Behold, this calamity is from the Lord. What more can I hope for from the Lord? End of chapter 6. So now we get more conflict in the region. First up, there's a little bit of trouble where the prophets with Elisha say that the place that they're sitting is too narrow. So let's go to the Jordan and everybody get a beam, right? So they're going to take some wood, they're going to cut down some trees, and then they're going to make for themselves a place to sit. They're going to build a nice sitting area. So he tells them, go right ahead. And they say, would you please come with us? And he goes, okay, sure. So they go and they're cutting down some trees. And it notes that when they're cutting down the trees, one of the pieces of wood falls into the water with the axe head lodged in it. And he's really upset. And he says, Alas, master, it is borrowed, meaning he borrowed that axe. It's not his property. Now he lost it. So Elisha, the man of God, says to him, where did it fall? And he tells him where it is. And then it says he cuts off a piece of wood, throws it there, and the axe blade floated. So, in other words, another miracle happening so very casually. And he said, pick it up for yourself. And he stretched out his hand and he took it. So he basically said, all right, go ahead and take it back. And by your own hand. Now, then it says that the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware of passing this place where Aram, the king, right? It says the king of Aram was waging war on Israel. So he warns the king of Israel, hey, if you're going to go by there, be careful because the Arameans are hiding there. So this gets relayed to the king, and the king avoids it. And it says that he takes precautions not once and not twice, meaning more than those 2 times. He was very careful so as not to spring the trap. This makes the king of Aram very angry. He doesn't understand why this is happening. He just assumes that somebody there must be leaking their plans. Who of ours is revealing my secrets? And they respond, no, it's not one of us. It's actually the God of Israel who, or this Elisha, this prophet, he is the one who hears the words that you're talking about. He's the one who tells the king of Israel words that you speak in your bedroom. In other words, he's the spy from the other side. So he asks, where is this guy? And they tell him he's in Dothan. So he goes and he gathers his army, chariots, horses, etc., and they besiege and surround the city. So yeah, they're surrounding the city, and one of the disciples of the prophet gets really, really nervous, and they're like, oh no, we're surrounded, it's over. And Elisha tells him, no, it's not over. And he asks that the boy or the disciple be allowed to see what is truly there. All over the mountain, chariots of fire. They're not alone. And exactly as he says, have no fear, for those who are with us are more numerous than those who are with them. He's confident because he could see the truth. They are surrounded by holy forces that are on their back. Or have their back. So Elisha prays and asks that the people be struck with blindness, and it happens. Then he leads them away into a different place, and it is to Samaria, right? They present him to the king, and the king asks, "Shall I slay them, my lord?" And he says, "No, don't kill them. Treat them like you would any prisoner," right? So set out food and water, and then let them eat and drink, and then let them go back to their masters. So very, very peaceful compared to how it could have been. So from this, it says that he prepares a lavish feast, and that they eat and drink, and it seems like they've made merry. Then they send them away to their masters. Aramean troops no longer continue to invade the land of Israel. Now, it says after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, musters his camp, all of it, and he goes up and besieges Samaria. Now here it says there's a famine in Samaria, and they're now surrounded and sieged. The inflation is so bad, or rather not the inflation, but just the economy is so crumbled that people are so desperate for food that it's expensive to buy even the head of a donkey or other items. So that's the significance of that particular part there regarding just the cost and all that, and how hard pressed they were in terms of famine. So the king of Israel is walking by on the wall, and then a woman calls out to him, and she's like, "I need your help." And he's like, "How can I help you?" And she says, "Well, yesterday we were really hungry, and this woman said, 'Why don't we eat your son today, and then tomorrow, if you do this, we'll eat my son.'" So the cannibalism of their own children due to the lack of food resources available. This is something that is expressly described in Deuteronomy, in the book of the Torah, where it says that they will be so deprived that they'll be eating their own children. Well, this has come to pass. And so it says when he hears this, right, and mind you, he also, when she addressed him, she goes, "If the Lord won't save you, what am I going to do? From whence shall I save you? The threshing floor or the winepress?" So it's a bad situation, and he's saying, like, what am I going to do? You're cooked either way. So finding out about this story is so disgusting and upsetting for him. It says that he rends his garments, he tears his garments, right? And this shows the overwhelming grief. Now, keep in mind, the choosing to do that right now, if you know the Torah, and it says that you're going to be in exile and so on, and that this horrible thing is going to happen, the fact that it's happening right now is like affirmation that you've really screwed up as the king, and your people is not the people that they're supposed to be, but that they've deviated so much from the Torah. So now he realizes Israel has fallen this far, and in his grief he says, "So shall God do to me, and so shall he continue if Elisha the son of Shaphat's head remain on him today." So he's basically saying, if we don't kill this prophet Elisha, then this is only going to get worse. Like, it's just going to, I'm going to be the one eating my children. So he makes it his declaration that he is going to take out Elisha. So he's sitting at home, the elders are there, and he gets a message from the messenger of the king. And before the messenger arrives, he says, "Have you seen that this son of a murderer has sent to remove my head? See that when the messenger comes, you close the door, hold the door fast against him. Surely the sound of his master's footsteps will follow him." So what he's saying is, when the guy comes here to try to give me some kind of serve, sentence, whatever, what we're going to do is we are going to basically lock him out. So you're not going to let him in. And not far behind, surely the guy he serves will come after he does. So just as he's telling all this, it's happening. And while he's still speaking, the messenger comes down to him and he says, "Behold, this calamity is from the Lord. What more can I hope for from the Lord?" So he's saying, look, this is God's will, and it's what's to be expected. So, what do you want? In any case, this is the situation as it stands. They want to blame the prophet when the prophet's only explaining to them why it's happening. Keep in mind, this guy is one of the many kings that has a terrible curse on him, most likely. So stay tuned for the consequences of that. In any case, that's the end of this week's episode of the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Hope you've had a very good time, very informative experience, and enjoyed the overall show. Until next time, this has been Shmuel Moshe saying thank you once again, and as always, Baruch Hashem.